So, the Cleveland Browns announced their initial 53-man roster, and Dustin Hopkins is no longer on my football team. What a great day to be alive. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, then please do me a favour and hit that subscribe button. So, we have it. The Browns have announced their initial 53-man roster for the 2025 season. Did your favourite player or favourite undrafted free agent make the team? Let's find out. I'm not going to spend an hour, congratulating and breaking down each player that made the team because, of course, this is the initial 53-man roster. Some of these guys that have made the team, even by tomorrow, won't be on the team, let alone by week one. So I will, of course, keep this somewhat brief as we go through it and update it throughout the week, and obviously leading up to week one as the Browns make some moves and shuffle this roster around from what it is right now as the initial 53. But let's get straight into it. Quarterbacks, 3 have made the roster. I, of course, had 4. I expected Kenny Pickett to be traded, but initially make the 53-man roster. I was wrong. It turns out they traded him before. But it's the same end result. They're going to be the 3 quarterbacks on the roster for week one. They're going to be the 3 quarterbacks on the roster for this season. Deshaun Watson was, of course, added to the PUP list. He will technically, he's eligible to come back after 4 games. Will he? No, he will not play for the Cleveland Browns again. Let's stop entertaining that nonsense. But, of course, he's technically still on the team. No surprises there, obviously. Running backs. The surprise, of course, is that there is only 2 running backs currently on the 53-man roster. So, if there's any indication to how this roster is going to change, that is Exhibit A. They are not going to enter week one with 2 running backs on the roster. Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson, they're the 2 guys that made it. So, Pierre Strong was cut, and that didn't mean that Armani Marshall was able to take that spot. The Browns obviously elect to initially only to carry 2 to obviously make room elsewhere. Obviously, as I said, they're not going to go into week one with 2 running backs. They will add a running back. Waivers tomorrow. Do they put a claim in for Audric Esteem? Probably 99% yes. And probably hope that the Titans don't take him first. So whether that spot is, someone they bring from the outside, or all of a sudden, they know something about Quinshon Judkins that we don't know, and he pops up in training this week, that will be obviously the move instead. But obviously expect there to be a move within the next few days, if not day, at the running back, and someone get added into that room to at least make it free before we get to week one. Wide receivers, 6. All guys that I had. This is one of the rooms that I got right in my prediction. Obviously, Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, Jamari Thrash, Isaiah Bond, DeAndre Carter, and Gage Larvadain. Shout out to Gage, undrafted free agent rookie this year. Very, very happy for him. Really excited for him. Amazing job from him. It's basically impossible to come into an NFL team as an undrafted rookie and make a team, and he has achieved that. So congratulations to him. I'm sure everyone in the fan base is happy for him. DeAndre Carter, someone that I predicted to be on the roster, but would not have been too angry, shall we say, if he didn't make the roster, just because I'm not entirely convinced by the idea of, using a roster spot solely for a 32-year-old returner. But hopefully he proves me wrong. The Browns, of course, have been cursed at that spot, the last few years, probably since Cribbs, really, but the last few years especially. So let's see if DeAndre Carter can offer something that is obviously worth using a roster spot on. But 6 wide receivers, all 6 guys that I predicted, not many surprises there. Tight ends, they've actually decided to carry 4 on the initial 53. David Njoku and Harold Fanning, of course. Blake Whiteheart, who's still obviously battling an injury, but should be ready for week one, and that's obviously why he's made the active roster. And then Brendan Bates, who of course was in the running for that 3rd tight end spot, has actually made the initial 53. So that's probably the move most likely than any other that will probably, Brendan Bates will probably go to the practice squad when the Browns bring in either a running back or, let's say, a DB or whatever elsewhere in the roster, he's probably going to be one of the first pieces to go. But shout out to him for making the initial 53, someone that I did not have making the initial 53, one of the 3 people I did not have. So, as I said, I don't expect him to stay on the 53, but shout out to him for obviously making the initial and showing enough to make that initial 53. Offensive linemen, I had them going with 9. They decided to go with 10. But technically, I wasn't wrong because, all 9 guys that I had made the team. They just decided to trade for a tackle before, obviously, the deadline. I did say in my prediction video that while I had them carrying 9 and wouldn't be shocked if they went into the week 1 with 9, they would be looking maybe to add a tackle, and they've decided to do that straight away, bringing in Katie Leverston from the Rams, someone they got to see a full game out of against them in the preseason game the past weekend. So obviously we can see they clearly believe in him to bring him in and immediately put him on the active 53. He was practicing already today as well. So 10 offensive linemen, all 9 guys that I had, of course: Joel Bitonio, Jack Conklin, Tevin Jenkins, DeJuan Jones, Cornelius Lucas, Ethan Posich, Wyatt Teller, Luke Weipler. Is it Weipler or Whippler? Someone needs to tell me which one it is. And Zach Zinter, who, a month ago we might have said is not going to make this roster and just did enough at the end. So no surprises there. 10 offensive linemen. They usually pretty much have always gone with 10 offensive linemen under this regime. So even though I thought maybe this might be the year they go with 9, they decided to go with 10. So not really a surprise. 10 defensive linemen moving to the defense. Again, pretty sure same with the wide receivers. All 10 that I had making the roster in my prediction. Malik Collins, Myles Garrett. I don't know why Malik Collins is listed. Oh, I suppose it is done in Is it even done in alphabetical order? Because Mason, I don't even think it is. Either way, that's not important, guys. Malik Collins, Myles Garrett, Mason Graham, Mike Hall, Shelby Harris, Aiden Huntington, Isaiah McGuire, Cameron Thomas, Joe Tyron Shaniqua, and Alex Wright. And obviously Mike Hall has just reminded me that I was wrong. I had Sam Kamara because I thought that Mike Hall would start the year injured. We hadn't really had any updates on that. Turns out he actually passed his physical. He's looking like he might even be ready to go week 1. So he makes the active roster. But I think I should technically get that by default, as I did say that Sam Kamara would be the one that comes out for Mike Hall when obviously Mike Hall is healthy. But that's really exciting that Mike Hall, is basically recovered from his injury, as the reporting is basically saying, and that if he's ready to go week 1, then that's just even more exciting to watch this defensive line, especially going up against that Bengals offensive line. So not too many surprises in that room. But obviously a nice positive surprise, pleasant surprise with Mike Hall actually passing his physical, being healthy, and making the initial 53. I say the initial 53, Mike Hall is going to be on the 53 all year, unless obviously, touch wood, he suffers an injury again. Linebackers, they've gone with 5. I had them going with 5. Jerome Baker, Devin Bush, Mahmoud Diabate, Easton Macarenus Arnold, and Carson Schlesinger, obviously highlighting that room. I had Winston Reed making the roster over Easton. I did hear AB talking about Easton in that preseason game. He obviously was very high on him. I thought maybe they put him on the practice squad and maybe look to bring him onto the roster maybe before week 1 or later in the season. But it turns out that Winston Reed had a back injury that I had no idea about, and he's actually been placed on injured reserve. So technically he is on the roster, just not taking up a 53 roster spot. But shout out to Easton Macarenus Arnold, obviously coming in as again another undrafted rookie. He's impressed throughout camp. He's impressed in preseason. As I mentioned, AB spoke very highly of him. So shout out to him. He's someone that probably, of the 3 misses that I had, he's probably the most likely to be on the roster week 1 and going forward, because as I said, Winston Reed is on IR. He will miss the first 4 weeks of the season. So he is the most likely to, as I said, to be on the roster week 1 compared to the other 2 guys that I didn't have in my prediction. But 5 linebackers, not too many surprises there. Defensive backs, I think I got this one. No, I didn't. I missed on this one. I did not have Donovan McMillan. I had Chris Edmonds making it instead. Both obviously undrafted rookies. Donovan McMillan got the nod. He made it ahead of Edmonds. So shout out to him. Congratulations to him. Another undrafted free agent rookie making the team. And then the other guys who I did have, Grant Delpit, Miles Harden, Ronnie Hickman, Rayshon Jenkins, Dom Jones. Shout out Dom Jones, that apparently not that many people seem to know about on Twitter today. Seeing the reaction to him making the roster, someone that has probably been our best corner throughout preseason. So shout out to him, another undrafted free agent rookie. Damon Kazi, Cameron Mitchell, Greg Newsome, and of course Denzel Ward. They have elected, as I predicted, to go with 5 safeties, 5 corners on the initial 53. I don't expect that to be the case by week 1. More than likely would be a Donovan McMillan. The third and final miss that I had on this 53, if they bring in a corner and go to 6 corners, then it's probably McMillan that comes out for it, and I do expect them to do that. Mike Hilton, someone out there that was cut, they could, take a flyer on at that slot corner, because I do not think the slot corner is currently on the roster. I do think they will look outside to bring someone in. So Donovan McMillan would be the number 1 candidate to, come off of this 53. But again, same with the other guys. Shout out to him for making the initial 53. And obviously with the Browns going with initially 5 safeties and 5 corners. And then finally, the specialists, the one that you're all waiting for. Corey Bojorquez has, of course, made the team. He is the 3rd best player on the team, of course. Rex Sinahara as the long snapper. Shout out to him. And the one you actually are all waiting for, Andre Schmidt. Congratulations. He has done enough this preseason, this training camp, to put us Browns fans out of our misery, to finally convince them to cut ties with Dustin Hopkins. They should have cut ties halfway through last season with how bad he was. Absolutely dreadful last year. The worst starting kicker in the league. Did not show any signs that he was going to bounce back, with his performances in the preseason. So the Browns decide to move on from Dustin Hopkins. Andre Schmidt wins the job. Shout out to him. He has not only won the job and made an NFL team, but he's also made a lot of Browns fans happy by doing enough to, obviously, as I mentioned, to convince them to not to move on from Dustin Hopkins. So that is the initial 53-man roster. As I said, I had 3 misses, technically, I suppose 4 if you count Kamara for Mike Hall. But then obviously Donovan McMillan, Easton Macarenas Arnold, and Brendan Bates all making the roster. As I said, will Brendan Bates and Donovan McMillan be on the roster by week 1? I doubt it. When the Browns make some moves, I obviously expect this to get shuffled around. So they're probably the 2 first candidates to come out, mainly not just because of them as players, but because of obviously the position, the roster spot at the positions that they're taking up, with that 4th tight end and that 5th safety, which I don't expect them to have 4 tight ends on the roster. But you never know, to be honest, because the Browns are obviously going to be in a lot of heavy sets this year. Maybe they do elect to carry 4 tight ends. Greg Dulwich was cut today, so maybe they bring him in. They could bring him in, obviously, for Brendan Bates. So we'll have to wait and see. But, if I had to guess now, of course, they're going to bring in a running back within the next day or 2. That just goes without saying. They've only currently got 2 on the roster. Maybe they get rid of Brendan Bates and only carry 3 tight ends. Maybe they keep 4, you never know. Offensive line is set. That's not going to change. The defensive line is set. That's not going to change. Linebackers, maybe we see Winston Reed, obviously, when he comes back from IR. Does he come in for one of those guys? If we have an injury in one of them in that room, then obviously he'd come out for one of those guys. We'll have to wait and see. And then the defensive backs, of course, the 5 safeties and 5 corners, I do expect to change. I do expect them to probably go into week 1 with 6 corners, 4 safeties, at least bring in a slot corner. Maybe they bring in another corner as well, a depth piece or a veteran piece we'll obviously have to wait and see. But as I said, there's going to be lots of moves in the coming days, in the next week. You know, it's always cool, the initial 53, you get to see these guys make these rosters, but you don't want to get too excited because, as I mentioned, some of them will get moved, you know, throughout the week and won't be on this roster by week 1. But, you know, some guys that obviously, you know, the undrafted players this year that made the team that definitely will be on the team. Gage Laverdane, obviously, shout out to him. Aidan Huntington, obviously, shout out to him as well. Is there anyone I am missing? Obviously, Easton Macarenas Arnold, I definitely expect to be on the week 1 roster. So that's at least 3 undrafted free agent rookies making this team this year. And that just goes on top of the, you know, already existing undrafted free agents that we've had from the last previous years, such as a Ronnie Hickman. So shout out to all of those guys. It's amazing for these guys to achieve their dream. I can't wait to see the Gage Laverdane video that I'm hoping the social media got. I saw a report that he was, you know, he got a phone call earlier today to be told that he was on, you know, he made the 53. So if we get any video clips of that, if we get any video clips of any of these guys being told, they're of course always cool moments, really awesome to see. And obviously, you know, we'll like to consume all of those videos, so send them my way. Contract terminated, just to go through obviously some of the players that missed out. Dustin Hopkins, Deontay Johnson, Sam Kamara, Julian Okora, who I think just kind of, you know, when he first came, I would have nailed in to make this team, but just with some of how impressive some of the younger guys have been, and obviously him suffering that injury in that last preseason game as well, that's kind of basically lost his spot. Running back Travion Williams, and then they've waived wide receiver Chase Cota, wide receiver Caden Davis, who I expect them to try heavily to bring back onto the practice squad. Same with safety Christopher Edmonds, someone that I had making this roster. I expect them to try and bring him back onto the practice squad. Cornerback Lemarian James, wide receiver Tissian Johnson, running back Armani Marshall, another one I expect them to try and bring him back onto the practice squad. Wide receiver Cade McDonald with an injury designation. Running back Pierre Strong with an injury designation, so that kind of answers my question that I had. Of course, I had him making the roster, but wasn't entirely sure with that concussion. Maybe he didn't make the roster because of an injury. Turns out he was waived with an injury designation. So they're the kind of main guys that didn't make it. Wide receiver David Bell was placed on the non-football injury reserve list, which I don't really know what's going on with David Bell. Obviously, any news that I get on that, we will talk about it. Placed on PUP, as mentioned, obviously, Deshaun Watson. He will not play, don't worry. Just because he can allegedly come back after 4 weeks does not mean he's going to play. I think the Browns would probably sign back Tyler Huntley to play in a game before they tried to trot Deshaun Watson out there, if I'm being honest. As mentioned as well, Winston Reed has been placed on IR, but with a designation for return. So that means he will not be out for the season. He will be eligible to return after 4 weeks. And then, biggest of them all, defensive tackle Mike Hall, passing his physical as mentioned. Really excited to see him come. So that is the Browns' initial 53-man roster. We all have our fun every year trying to predict these. As I always mention, you're never going to get it right. There's always going to be annoying things that, you know, you might have been toying between going one way or the other, as I was with an Edmonds and a McMillan. I go with Edmonds, they go with McMillan. At the end of the day, none of that matters. All that actually matters is these guys on this roster. So, you know, congratulate these guys. Be happy for these guys. As I mentioned, yes, some of them aren't going to be on the roster by week 1, but that doesn't stop that doesn't take away their achievement of making an initial 53-man NFL roster. So shout out to all of these guys. As mentioned, we'll obviously keep updated throughout the week as we get all of the moves that the Browns make leading up to week 1. But that will do it for me today, guys. Let me know, how many did you get correct? How many did you get wrong? What guys are you excited about, happy about making the team? Which guys are you annoyed about not making the team? All of that stuff, let me know in the comments below. If you do enjoy my content, then please drop this video a like, hit the subscribe button. It's free, but it really, really helps out my channel. You can also check the links in the description to see where you can follow and interact with me on social media. As I always say, I'm trying to build a community of Cleveland Browns fans, and even if that means I only get to talk to one fan a day, I'm happy because I'm talking Browns football with the best fan base in the world. Thanks again for watching, guys. Have an amazing rest of the week. Enjoy all of the news, all of the excitement with obviously week 1 coming right around the corner. But most importantly, go Browns.